All right. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Driving Meaningful Change. My name is Bhavani Krishnan. I am an enterprise business agility consultant with Agile Velocity, and I will be your host and moderator. Today is not about new tools for the sake of tools. It's more about how leaders create real, sustainable change, shifting how we think, how we work, and how we lead together. And personally, change is cultural before it's procedural. And it starts with the mindset that shows up as trust, as empowerment, and a clear line from strategy to impact. And you'll hear from our executives today who have broken traditional molds, reimagined how work gets done, and built environments where people and performance thrive. So, to kick us off, I am thrilled to introduce my co host and fellow moderator, Gina Foster, who is a Senior Director of Client Success at Agile Velocity. Gina, over to you.
Thank you, Bhavani. I'm excited and thrilled to introduce each of our panelists. We are joined by three incredible leaders today, each with a unique perspective on driving organizational change. So first is Bala Vinayagam, President of Qualitrol, Cindi Schulenberg, Director of UX Research and Design at Southwest Airlines, and Jeff Terrell, Program Management and Transformation Leader, who has held positions at HomeAway, Expedia, and Zen Business. Welcome. Let me ask you a question. Could you please tell us in one sentence why this topic, driving meaningful change, matters to you personally? Bala, let's start with you.
Agility is a cornerstone for innovation. So for me, it is important that to make agility work, people need to embrace the change that comes with it. So the topic is very relevant for us.
And Cindi, what about you?
I think about it as continuous improvement, right? Things can't stay the same and improve. And so I think the topic of change, how it gets incorporated, is incredibly important.
Thank you. And Jeff, let's hear your perspective.
I think change is constant, in our lives and in companies. And through all the transformations I've been through, I think it's great if leaders can help their team members through all the change.
Thank you. Well, we definitely see that there are some common factors in all of y'all's answers. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. And let's spend a few minutes getting to know the human stories behind your leadership journeys.
Thank you, Gina. I would like to pick up from where you are starting to kind of lead us together. So I would like to further explore the why behind your change journey, whether it is, Bala, Cindi, or Jeff. What inspired you to lead the meaningful change in your organization? Was it more of, a challenge you faced, or more of a defining moment, or an opportunity that changed you to lead? And anybody can answer it.
All right, I'll jump in there. I think we started, as I mentioned, in 2019, looking at how in marketing we could be a lot more agile. It was taking us months to get things out. So to your point, it really comes down in that particular case to the challenge. And we wanted to know, can we work faster? What does that look like? We wanted to make sure that we were being a little bit more iterative and getting maybe smaller chunks of value, but more value regularly. And so I think that's what really put us on an agile journey. And we have been iterating on that ever since.
Awesome. Bala or Jeff, would you care to add anything to that?
Definitely. I think very similar to what Cindi has been saying. Like we have a strong philosophy around, dream, develop, and deliver. While the framework has been super good, actually, the ability to really stay agile and go faster is where actually exactly the rubber hits the road and tractions don't follow, right? And this is where the agile framework with the right set of tools and mindsets are very critical to make sure that we are able to really get that speed up. Actually, it's not the same which we used to do. Product launches, which is more like a waterfall method, waiting for 2 years, 3 years. It's hardware. When it comes to hardware, it's not easy to adapt. Now, how do we really bring the agile framework into the hardware story and then enhance and speed up is what actually got us to this, agile safe deployment in our work environment today.
Awesome. That's good to hear both perspectives, one from a software side, the other from a hardware side. So we've got both. Jeff, anything to add to that?
No, not on that one.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we talked about, why it mattered to you. Why was it so personal for you? Now let's talk about the future of leadership. That's where you all come in, right? Like each of you are a leader and you have broken barriers to get to the point where you are today and how you have been able to steer your organization. And from where I stand, where Gina stands, we've seen organizations are rapidly moving toward digitalization. Cindy, you can relate with that and probably others too, right? Business agility and customer centricity. And that evolution is redefining what it truly means to lead, right? So let me start with Cindy and let me ask you, how do you see the role of executives evolving as industries embrace digitalization and agility?
Yeah, absolutely. So as industries embrace digitalization and agility, executives have to evolve, I think, from directive leadership to becoming enablers of, a bit of buzzwords here, but the empowered cross-functional team. And to dive into that a little bit, it's incredibly important to make it successful, to make it cross-functional. It's got to include everyone, and they do have to be empowered. And so to enable and empower them, you have to set a clear vision. You have to provide what success looks like. You have to foster that psychological safety, and you have to remove those organizational barriers that slow innovation. And that is in stark contrast to controlling the execution that many of us have done historically. We've got to focus on the alignment and investing in the necessary systems to encourage the learning mindset that's needed to lead through constant change.
Thank you.
Bala, to expand on that a little bit, and as we talk about mindsets, what leadership behavior or mindsets are most critical for enabling innovation at scale, in your opinion?
I think I can concur with what Cindy was talking about, the vision and the empowerment, right? To me, innovation at scale doesn't come from having the smartest strategy, right? It really comes from creating the right conditions for people to experiment, learn, and to adapt. For me, that starts with the clarity of purpose, right? What's the vision actually that Cindy was talking about? People need to understand not just what we are trying to achieve, but why it matters. When that purpose is clear, it fuels creativity and it fuels that ownership, right? And the second one on this one is really about the trust and the empowerment. I think Cindy also talked about the empowerment actually on this topic, right? You can't scale innovation through control. No amount of process can substitute actually for innovation to happen. You have to really give the teams the space to make the decisions, to test, to fail fast, and to learn faster. All right. And finally, leaders have to model it, right? Leaders have to model that curiosity and the humility. At least on my side, I make it as a habit actually to ask more questions, more provoking questions, than give answers or leading them actually into a solution. Admitting we don't know everything creates a culture where people feel safe to explore new ideas, right? So when you combine this purpose, trust, and the curiosity, then innovation becomes more like a habit, like not like a side hustle or a side project.
Okay. So we looked at the different perspectives there, right? One from embracing that aspect of it, and then how are we scaling that innovation? Now, Cindy, let me ask you this. How do you balance the operational excellence with experimentation and learning? Because we want to learn more about like how do you balance both of those when you are, leading change?
Absolutely. I think it's an interesting thing. There's a lot of perspective that when you move into an agile framework, there's less structure potentially. And so, what I would say to that is that there's a need to establish a foundation of disciplined process. That doesn't mean that it's extensive, but you've got to be intentionally like to carve out the space for innovation. You do need some strong governance, clear metrics, consistent delivery, because I think that's what actually creates the room for test and learn cycles. You have got a steady pace of progress that your company wants and leans on. And then you have a smaller space potentially that has you learning, allowing you to explore, to adapt without risking planned items. So rather than being disruptive, test and learn can be managed while feeding back insights into the planned cycles.
Okay.
Jeff, we talked a little bit about allowing space for the teams to fail fast and to learn. Do you have a specific time where a decision or an initiative where you saw leadership mindset make or break transformation momentum that you can share?
Um, Several. The first thing that comes to mind is the culture, though. Leadership embracing, Bala said failure and fast. If it's transparent and teams are allowed to share what they've learned from failures, I think it sets up the culture really well. So that's kind of like where it helps the culture, the failing fast and learning and momentum for teams to actually, change and deliver value to their customers. I think on the break side of things, too much change in a short amount of time can really slow things down. I was part of a company where they changed the portfolio planning cycle 3 times in 9 months, and there was too much change, and you can't really, focus on improving while you're changing at the same time. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. So, let's deepen the conversation and focus on the human side a little bit. The part that truly tests the leadership, right? You're talking about creating space for people and making sure that there's transparency, test and learn. But change inevitably creates tension, right? There's tension between comfort and courage. There's tension between established habits and the emerging ways of working. So I want to focus a little bit on the mindset side of it and explore the human side. And I want to hear from you all. So Gina, I'm going to take this section and I'll give you the next section. How about you take the next section? I'll take this one. So Cindi, what mindset shifts have you personally had to make to sustain meaningful change?
Yeah. And it's interesting as I was thinking about this, I was like, that makes it seem like the shifts are complete, and some of them are harder. We are still working through a lot of these. But 3 came to mind for me. So from planning to adapting, right? Executives often want comprehensive planning. When will we get what? And for my team, we're really shifting from, I'm in design and research. And so we're shifting from full upfront designs to embracing iteration and continuous learning, recognizing that clarity and efficiency comes from that cross collaboration. How do we get with technology from the beginning to ensure what we're designing is really feasible? And so that shifts from really start planning. I think the second one is ownership to empowerment, right? There are many initiatives, and I cannot personally drive every deliverable. I've got to enable my teams to make informed, autonomous decisions, trusting that alignment and shared context is going to create the more successful outcomes. The third one I'd mentioned is moving again from delivery to discovery, right? Research and design that we provide shapes what to build and why. And rather than that kind of waterfall execution, our designer's role in this case is actually to step into strategy and innovation and help through that. So I think those are the elements and the shifts that we continue to make.
Okay. So Bala, having heard Cindy's response to that, and keeping in mind that it is an ongoing effort, right, for many organizations, how did you win buying from people who were either skeptical or were really fatigued by the change?
I mean, what Jeff said actually was just making me thinking, right? If you introduce a process 3 times in 9 months' time, just think about actually trying to rally your people towards this change. I think, I think to me, the first thing I have learned actually is that resistance for change usually comes from experience,
Hmm.
not attitude.
Hmm.
Because Jeff's example was exactly that, right? People have seen initiatives that promise transformation and then disappear in 6 months later. So skepticism is often earned and learned, actually, in my opinion. At least on my side, like what we'll do is, because I've gone through this implementation of these different agile frameworks in 3 different companies, 6 different portfolios. One thing that I've learned is, like, you got to start by listening, right? Really listening to what's underneath that skepticism. Often it's fatigue, fear, or lack of clarity. Acknowledging that is key to building that credibility, in my opinion. And then, one of the other thing that I do normally is also connect the change to something meaningful, right? Is that a customer story? Is that a business need? Or even a personal impact that can come with it? When people see how these changes connect to the purpose, they begin to see themselves in the story. That's when you really change, their fear of losing the known to really go chase the unknown. And unknown is really the change, right? And focus on as well quick wins. I think visible wins. People need to see nothing changes minds like success, right? And having that visibility to the small wins and winning and showing that win and showing the progress, however small, it builds the momentum and the confidence for the teams to co-embrace this change. And ultimately, people also don't buy into a plan, right? Just because the management wants a new process, new tools. I mean, how many times you have seen how many companies have failed, actually not able to scale, right? Large companies have been part of have failed successfully in putting these changes into place. The reason is because people buy into the trust more than the plan. If they trust that leadership will follow through and listen along the way that we just talked about at the beginning, they will come along for the journey. And that's when the change normally becomes a commitment from their side.
Okay, so to summarize, then you're saying, and a lot of it resonates with me, because this is what, when we are engaging with the teams as coaches and as change consultants, we recommend these things. So it's really refreshing to hear that from leaders like you all, where you're like, make things transparent, make the change meaningful to each individual so that they are able to connect with it, and then make sure that, that fatigue is addressed instead of introducing newer things over and over again. So I really appreciate that perspective. Now, Jeff, continuing on the same thread, what I've noticed is, typically when there's a change initiative, that there's a lot of support and excitement and empowerment from the top leadership, right? Like your executives are the ones that usually are recommending that. And the teams are aware, they're like, okay, yeah, they're hoping that their day-to-day life changes, and they're expecting and they're excited about it. But often the middle management is the one that's often hardest hit, right? And they are expected to deliver and transform at the same time, because the delivery leaders in the middle, they're like, people are holding me accountable for this, and I have to then further, cascade that to the team members. So in that situation, how have you supported them?
Good question. You're right. I think middle management is right stuck in the middle of the decisions and how to carry it out. So it's important to make sure leadership shares the why behind it, kind of like you mentioned, you said. But once they get through that, some people, don't know what to do next. The first thing that comes to mind is include them in the process and have a feedback loop with them, and a continuous feedback loop. Can have one-on-ones, with their managers, with a group that's actually leading the change, can have lean coffees. There's different ways to do it, but it's important that they're part of the solution and how that change is rolled out. Because each team is different, each department, portfolio, whatever group of teams are different. And by doing that, you'll discover there's some common themes there that could be addressed as a large group at the company level. But also you'll find some unique custom things that are different that may have not thought about. And then you partner together to put a plan together. And as long as you keep that communication loop going, I think the success will come.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we've talked about, how did the mindset shift happens, and how to get buy-in from people, and how to support Cindi, all through this transformation and this change initiative. There's a lot of, I mean, we've heard about this J curve, right? Like this curve that starts with a lot of excitement, and then there's dip down, and then they go through that momentum. So what keeps, and we want to keep the momentum alive, right? So what keeps the momentum alive once that initial excitement fades?
I think I'm going to echo a lot of what you've heard from Bala and Jeff on this, but the visible progress as compared to a more traditional digital environment for us, to where you're seeing big projects come out every few years, that visible progress with the smaller elements that are going out, I think that does encourage people to see that and keep the momentum going, to see the change. And so, quick example from Southwest Airlines years ago, some of you may remember this, we had an issue with bags. And so being able to get the team involved in how do we solve this challenge, we were able to come out with a bag tracker within the same years. That is huge, to be able to solve big, meaningful problems. And so I think that's an element of it. I think there's also that empowerment in the autonomy that we continue to talk about here, for knowing what's needed within those working teams and having that middle management layer being able to address it through all the tools and the ceremonies that are available in Agile, without needing heavy oversight from your leadership. I think the recognition, the continuous improvement, celebrating small wins, if you can stay on track with that and not forget those tactics, I think those elements keep the team highly motivated to keep up that type of process.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to maybe ask one more question, and then we can pivot. So Bala, we talked about like the human side of it, and you all have are actually building a theme or this pattern of empowering individuals and trusting them, giving them the right environment and motivating people at the right level and sharing the actual problem with them so they can own it and they can be accountable for it, and people like that, right? So all of this to ask, what role does psychological safety, or to build more on what you mentioned around transparency, play in sustaining that change?
Very good question. It's a tough one as well, right? It's a lot on how leaders tend themselves to be as part of the problem solving process itself with change, right? I would say you know psychological safety is like a foundation of all meaningful change, right? Without it, people stay quiet when they see risk, or worse, they stop offering ideas. That's not what we want to happen. So, in my experience, transformation succeeds when people feel that they can speak up. There is a forum for them to express very openly, right? Whether it is to challenge an assumption or ask the tough questions, including leadership, right? This is not like in a small group setting, actually, where they're able to go do it. I think we should empower an organization to really ask questions all the way up, actually, right? And admit a mistake. That openness keeps organizations honest and adaptive. And leaders need to model that vulnerability across all levels. Agile is not a deployment to actually do R&D and product management. And agility, in my opinion, is an organizational deployment and an organizational mindset, right? To show that it's okay not to have all the answers is a vulnerability that leaders have to model. When I normally share about what we are learning, or even about what didn't go as planned at my level, it really signals the transparency with the rest of the team. So they start modeling it, they start valuing it, and they know that hey, you can fail, and failure is a learning, and it's not going to be used as a tool to go punish, right? We are deploying safe agile, Bhavani, as you know right now. The velocity is not actually something we have perfected, right? Which means that there's going to be a lot more of iterative process in the PI planning and the increments to really understand actually what is the ultimate group's speed is going to go look like, which means that openness, that vulnerability is very important. And the transparency also builds alignment and trust, in my opinion, right? People are more likely to commit to change when they understand the why and can see the roadmap ahead. Sustaining that transformation isn't about like also not having all the answers, right? Just keep the communication open, and the trust actually keeps flowing.
Awesome. Gina, I think we have the right panelists for this specific topic, where like leaders like you are more and more needed to make this mainstream and put it out there in the world, in the industry, so that the rest of the organization, the rest of the industry can understand how modeling leadership is so important, right? Because there's this perception where people are like, oh, we can't fail. Oh, we have to have a perfect velocity. Oh, we have to have a sustaining throughput. All of that is important. But as you mentioned, failure is okay. Failure is an opportunity for you to get up and improve and get better at it. And leaders like you, as you are talking about it, I'm like, the people in your organization must be super excited to work with you and work under your leadership. So I'm thankful for that. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more, Bhavani. So we've talked about people, beliefs, and behaviors, but now I'd like to zoom out to sustaining that impact at scale. So in my experience as a director of client success, I've come to realize that transformation doesn't end with one success story. It's about turning that success into a system that lasts. So Bala, how do you scale innovation without losing speed or focus?
Yeah, that's a very challenging question. I think I have a lot of scars actually on my back on this particular topic.
I'm sure.
Some experience on this one. See, the challenge with scaling innovation is that what works for a small team can collapse under complexity if you're not very careful. I've done multiple engineering acquisitions. Some have been very good, some have gone disaster. The products have been good, the companies have been good, and you bring them on and try to scale them up, it collapses, right? And what I have understood over a period of time, like, people tend to scale process faster than the principles. If you really focus on scaling the principles and then actually scaling the process, it works immensely very well, because that principle is the challenging part, because it also goes back to what Jeff said at the beginning, culture, right? So start identifying what made an idea successful. Is it the behavior, the mindset, the structure? Then try to codify those elements into frameworks, right? And then is it not actually a framework that works for someone else will work for others, right? The framework is something that others can go adapt, in my opinion, not replicate, really adapt. And that makes a big difference in scaling innovation. Every market, every team has their own realities. We were modeling Spotify in one of the companies as a benchmark on this one, and it's like a completely different set of product, you know, right? And
Yes.
it's a software platform monetizing a different set of outcome to a hardware one was like, we could have taken Spotify and used exactly that. It could have failed for sure, like a disaster. Instead, we took Spotify and completely modified it to fit an hardware company that also has got software and very different business model. So that's where the market reality comes into play for each and every team when they take and adapt it. So, and also giving the people to autonomy to localize the solutions, like while keeping this shared sense of direction through metrics, values, and purpose comes into play. So today we use in Ralliant, where I am part of, we have a very strong Danaher business system, 40 business system, the Ralliant business system. The metrics comes in, and the values and purpose actually now helps really scale those businesses we acquire. So we are a portfolio company. We tend to normally acquire these companies, and we apply these principles and actually these processes to go help actually scale the innovation.
Mm.
Thank you. To expand on that, Jeff, can you talk to us about what practices or structures have helped sustain change over time?
Yeah, things that come to mind are the power of retrospectives. Something that, was working on a year and a half transformation is flexibility. And the third is celebrating wins. So back to the retrospectives, we've talked about failure and companies, embracing failure and learning. Retrospectives are a great way. And it's not just the agile teams or the Kanban teams, on the ground. This could be VPs from different departments getting together once a month. It could be an end of a project. But I think if you just continue and have that as part of the culture, the momentum will continue. It's a great way to set up success from learning perspective. Flexibility, I mentioned this earlier, not every team's the same. So everybody doesn't have to do Scrum the same way. You don't have to have the same ceremonies every 2 weeks. So having some flexibility in there and focusing on metrics, that's more empowering to the teams to let them kind of go through the journey a little bit. And celebrating wins, I think it's huge. I've seen it in all hands. I've seen it in blogs, but having the culture where people share what they've changed and how it's helped them, it's great because other people can try that out too, and other teams can adapt that. So I think those are the three things that resonate.
Thank you. Practices are good, but they get you in the rhythm, but leaders want results. and customers want to see results. So Cindi, how do you balance short-term pressure, quarterly results with long-term transformational goals?
Yeah, thank you. There are always going to be the short-term pressures. There are things that all of our companies need to do. And I think it's about how we define success, how we share context on the larger picture and the smaller picture with our teams to connect the dots for them. So again, always those short-term pressures. There are projects that we are going to have to get done, but it's in momentum of building toward that longer transformational change. So for me in design and research, it's not about one big milestone. It's about building we said this earlier, the systems and the habits that keep the progress moving forward, and about constantly connecting those dots for my folks to help them see the smaller pressures or the quarterly results, how those get defined in our larger transformational efforts is incredibly important, because I think that's what keeps the momentum into the larger transformational goals.
Thank you. You mentioned focusing on repeatable process, ensuring that they are pragmatic to connect with people. Jeff, what advice would you give leaders trying to shift from project-based to outcome-based delivery?
Good question. I think keeping it simple and focusing on some core metrics by leadership and the teams. And I'll just use some examples. It could be quality. It could be time to market for feature development. But if leadership, aligns with all the teams doing the work, and whether it's 3 or 5, just core metrics, if you just watch the progress of those rather than as a leader expecting the change perfection overnight, I think that is something that would be alignment with everybody in the company. I think that's a good success.
Okay, so let's tie it all together. Bala, what does empowerment really look like in your organization beyond just the buzzword?
Ooh, looks like it's a loaded question now, actually.
Take your time. Explain it to us.
See, you said the word buzzword, right? To me, the empowerment is not about sloganeering, right? It's very easy to talk about we empower the people, we empower the lowest actually in the denomination to go make things happen. But I think to me, it's all about decision rights and accountability, right? It means that people don't need permission to do the right thing for the customer or for the business. It's cultural in as well, that empowerment, in my opinion. In our organization, like the empowerment shows up through the clarity of outcomes, like not task. Teams know that what what and the why, and Jeff talked about the scrum composition and the rituals is not the same. Actually, it can be different for different people, and that's where what we tell the teams is, say, you can have the freedom to go decide the how, but you should know the what and the why actually in order to go drive what the how should look like, right? And we also make sure that people have access to information and context. It's very important, because empowerment without data is just guesswork. So we focus a lot on metricing. We run a very tight, metricing around month by month on the data, collect the data, and we apply a problem-solving process that allows us actually to keep moving forward. We talked about continuous improvement at the beginning, because this really helps us with the right level of actually empowerment, like what exactly the data is telling us from an empowerment perspective, and where we need as leaders to go step in, right? And most of the time, we as leaders, we also like act as coaches and gatekeepers. It's not easy, right? When you're trying to be operational, when you're trying to be strategic, we talked about psychological safety. The ability of the leaders to elevate themselves as coaches in this process is, in my opinion, the biggest challenge that comes to empowerment. Because when things go bad, like people roll up the sleeves and they get into the weeds. How do you really step back and let the teams actually get into the weeds so that the course correction happens from an empowerment perspective is very, very clear. And also, like the last one, when people feel like trusted to act and they're supported to learn, you see a huge lift in engagement. I think that's another important thing that I've learned over a period of time is you can deploy process, you can deploy the tools, you have principles, but if you're really not able to empower them and that empowerment is not helping with the engagement, then it stifles the creativity and ownership. So empowerment is not a buzzword, actually, right? It's a competitive advantage. Those who figure this out are the ones that can scale innovation big time.
So Bala, can I ask you a follow-on question? Um, so you mentioned that you've done this in other organizations, and especially like, agility in hardware is a, li- a lot more harder than applying agility in software, right? As is empowerment for a change initiative is, and you mentioned that it's a loaded question. It is hard, right? Like leaders modeling agility, leaders modeling the mindset, the behavior. All of that is hard enough, let alone applying that in an industry where, you can't like really apply agility easily. So the follow-on question is, when you are talking about like, beyond the buzzword, how do you know to find the right person to empower them with such a huge responsibility of tying it all together, keeping the momentum going, making sure that it's sustainable, making sure that it's scalable? How do you find the right person? What are you looking for in that person?
Yeah, I think we talked. I think almost Cindy, Jeff, everybody talked about this one, right? Though the right person is also going to be a learning process, in my opinion. Like those who have really tried it out, those who got the learning, from the past, and those who actually are willing to go learn as they go along, are probably some of the key traits that I'm looking for. So what I'm looking for, number one, is the learning agility, right? You can apply agility for product development. If you don't have the learning agility in the leader, because none of these are going to be very easy, right? We are taking principles that are tried well actually in the digital realm, and we bring it to the hardware side. It's highly regulated environments. Products in our cycle takes minimum of 18 to 36 months actually, and then it takes another 2 to 3 years of approval cycle with our customers,
Hmm.
right? And then from that approval cycle, it goes into a spec cycle. From that spec cycle, it goes into an 18, 20 years. Now think about all these utilities and nuclear plants and power plants, and we call them as they suffer from something called pilotosis, right? They
Hmm.
pilot forever, and then the technology on one side, leapfrogs actually, right?
Right.
So for us, that learning agility is very important to really have in those leaders to make sure that one, they're able to inculcate the change here and then also expose that change outside as well, because bringing our customers along with that is very critical. And that's one of the reasons why we also brought customer panels as a key story here. The more we are engaging customers inside that story, they naturally become the first ones to cut the PO. So
Hmm.
that kind of changes the complexion as well. So learning agility too is actually the commercial mindset, right? What we are trying to put in place, is it really scalable from a customer perspective? That learning agility and customer mindset, I would put on the top of the agenda whenever I look for the people to come and implement change for us.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's solid.
Cindy, would you share with us what your perspective is as it relates to what empowerment looks like in your organization?
Sure, absolutely. As I thought about this, I really, there's the Southwest environment, right? Our people and our values are our greatest strengths, but true empowerment, I think, ensures that we have those same values while enabling candor and constructive challenge. And so, as I thought about this, for me, it looks a lot like courage. It is the ability to, we will all say what is working incredibly well in an organization and getting momentum on that type of change. I think what's really hard is to raise your hand where things are not going well. What needs to change from either a system perspective, an interaction perspective, possibly a handoff. And so being able to raise your voice there without fear, knowing that honesty is going to lead to improvement and not judgment, I think is what we encourage as empowerment here.
You. And Jeff, in an ideal world, what does empowerment in an organization look like from your standpoint?
I think the word that comes to mind is trust. I think, Bala mentioned is like having an environment where people can speak what they're thinking about and have a conversation. And that spreads. So if you have an event that is really sad or really hard on a team, and you have an open conversation with it, they can build that trust up that it can happen again. So getting the trust from the team members and the employees to speak up and not like keep things to themselves is a metric that you follow.
All right, so roll up your sleeves, get ready for some fun. I know this has been like a serious line of questioning, because the topic is so, right? We want it to be really, really impactful. Um, So let's have some fun with rapid fire round. It's quick one-line answers. Gina and I will go back and forth and we'll pepper you with questions and we'll address the person that we're looking for the answer from, but please jump in because we want it to be more like, hey, I want to jump for that. So let me start with Bala. One word you would use to describe great leadership.
Just
One word, not one sentence, one word.
one word, actually.
You can think. One word.
Um, um, I would pick intent. Intentional is my word.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts?
I was thinking clarity.
All
Very
right.
simple.
I thought
Okay.
transparent.
Ooh, all right. Put that together now. All right. Gina?
All right, Cindy, a habit or ritual that keeps you grounded during change.
Mm.
Reflection. Taking the time to kind of pause, connect all the dots, see what's happening before you. I think that helps me stay intentional.
Anybody else want to fight for it?
Hey, journaling helped me big time.
Okay.
Listening,
Ooh, I love this. Maybe we should ask these to everybody. I like the different perspectives. Okay, so Jeff, you answered this last. So one myth about transformation you wish people would stop believing.
Change is not hard. It's just new. And
Mm,
I owe that to my wife. I heard it in one of her meetings a couple years ago. She was talking with her leaders, and it really got me because if you think about it, it is true. Because you hear this decision coming down from leadership, and people get afraid, but it's just a new process, a new way of doing something. So if employees and everybody can just change the mindset of where they're coming from and not a negative thing, it's just something new to learn. It really got me. It's a good phrase.
I love that. Bala or Cindy?
Oh,
One myth.
ask the question again.
Yeah, I was going to one myth about transformation you wish people would stop believing.
Change is not step change, right? Change is gradual. It's incremental. It's a grind, in my opinion. I think many people don't realize change from
Mm,
perspective, right? The delta is very, very small that accumulates over a period of time.
Yeah.
all
Yeah. And
right.
it has
Yeah.
no endpoint, right? Like it is continual, right?
Yep.
Love that.
All right, Cindy, what is your best advice for organizations that are just starting their change journey?
I think it starts with your people. Setting up, a lot of what we've talked about here, this is not one word. Starting with your people and setting up the foundation for the safety, the trust that we talked about. I think the other element is a lot of grace. When a whole organization is learning together and at once, there's misstep. That's okay. What are we learning from that, and how are we carrying it forward?
Jeff or Bala, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I think well said, actually, by Cindy.
Well said. I think the phrase that comes to mind is one of our codes in our family is there's no such thing as perfect. So don't think there's only one way of doing something. You can be flexible and adapt and trust everyone else to try something new.
So Jeff, noodling on that a little bit further, and this kind of ties in with our next question as well. Was there a moment where you realized change really had to start with you, like you as a leader, individual?
Yes, there something comes to mind. I went through 3 organization transformations back when we got acquired by Expedia and got brought into the whole topic and the plan early on before it was public. And I remember this one meeting after I understood what everything's going to happen. It wasn't just my team, engineers, product, marketing. A lot of people were moving into a different department within Expedia. new managers, different roles. And I learned this before it was going to happen. And after the, big meetings, I had a one-on-one with the HR business partner, and she goes, this is going to be one of a few of these in the next, 12 to 16 months. And we really need your help to lead this through, because you know the employees in your company a little better. So that hit home, and that changed my mindset of not just getting it done, but to learn from it and how I'm going to coach people through change and listen to them and adapt and learn from the first time. So that was something that was really memorable.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Cindi or Bala, do you have anything to add to that?
That was good.
Okay. All right. Last question. Bala, how did your teams respond when they saw changes being modeled by leadership?
So should I say one word, or can I explain?
You can explain this one.
All right. I would say that they responded with belief, right? When people see leaders walking the talk, making tough choices, changing their habits, my experience, it really shifts the culture from compliance to commitment. And that's the secret sauce. They stop asking if you're changing and start asking how they can help. And this is where big shift comes in and makes things work, actually, in my opinion.
So if you had to summarize it in one word, what would your one word be?
One word: belief.
Thank you. Cindi or Jeff, anything to add?
That was great.
Maybe not in one word, but I think similar to belief, but like a positive attitude. When leaders are there and they have a positive attitude, I think that trickles down for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. This has been such a rich conversation. Lots of advice and, actually actionable advice for people to take on and implement and try and experiment. And if there's one thread that ran through everything today, it's that meaningful change starts with the mindset, right? And it grows through shared ownership, shared accountability, and also leaders modeling that kind of mindset. So it was really insightful to hear your thoughts and your perspective. And I am hoping that people are able to put this into perspective and get the same kind of results that y'all have gotten. More than anything, is empowering people and keeping them motivated and sustaining change in your organization. So thank you so much for this.